This lecture is going to cover the first part of 4.3, which is the Second Industrial Revolution. And during this time period that lasts from around the 1890s all the way up into the 1930s, we're going to see a lot of the problems from the initial Industrial Revolution fixed and improvements made on a lot of the inventions. So the most important two pieces of vocabulary here are going to be stock and corporations. Stock are shares in a company that a person can buy. This is like just investing in a company, meaning you actually own a piece of it. And corporations. Corporations are going to be kind of the new development during this time period. And this is a business that is owned by a group of people. It's a group ownership of a business, and it lessens the risk of owning a business. Before the Industrial Revolution, before the invention of the corporation, a company was really tied to a certain person. So if it went out of business, you lost everything. But with a corporation, the corporation is viewed as its kind of own person. So if a corporation goes under, a person only loses the part of their money that they put into the corporation. We'll go more into that later. A cartel is going to be two or more companies that work together. We'll go over that again when we talk about monopolies. You should already know capital, and I just have interchangeable parts in the assembly line on here in case you need to reference them. So in around the 1880s, 1890s, big business becomes a very important part of society. And this is because a lot of the new industries like coal, steel, oil, the railroad, they're very, very expensive. So solution is the formation of the corporation. And the way the corporation comes about is through the selling of stock. So because things like the railroad are so expensive and they cost hundreds of millions of dollars, there is no one that has that much money. So stock allows these corporations to raise the money to build these steel plants, to build these oil fields, to build these mines. When you buy a piece of stock in a corporation, you are actually owning a piece of that corporation. So you get the profit from that corporation. You get a little piece of it. If the corporation does well, your stock increases in value. If the corporation doesn't do well, your stock decreases in value. Like I said before, it allows companies to raise money very, very quickly so that they can invest and then build these giant new industries. Without the corporation, you don't have stock. They kind of go hand in hand. So, this is what gives rise to a lot of our modern corporations. Two of the downsides of a corporation is the growth of the monopolies and the cartels. So, around the 1890s, corporations get so powerful that they begin to control whole areas of business. And that is when one company controls a whole area of an industry. They're the only one that can produce or sell that product. That's a monopoly. So think like the game Monopoly, where you control a whole area of the board, all the blue spaces or all the green spaces. Monopolies are like John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil, where he was the only person that you could get oil from. A cartel is where two or more companies work together to fix prices, and they basically make a monopoly by all working together. Monopolies and cartels are bad because it hurts consumers. It drives prices up and it drives innovation down. Why would a company ever want to improve their product if they know that people have to buy it and they're the only one they can get it from? So at the end of the day, monopolies can make companies and corporations a bunch of money, but they hurt the consumer and the economy as a whole. So the advantages of a corporation, just to kind of review, a corporation is treated as an individual. So money in it is its own money. It doesn't have as much liability to the people who invest in it. And then that sale of stock. They can raise money very quickly. They can transfer ownership. It allows a lot of flexibility with a corporation. So some of the people who started corporations are going to be guys like Alfred Krupp in Germany, and he eventually goes on to pretty much control all the coal, iron, and steel in Germany and have a monopoly. John D. Rockefeller, who controlled Standard Oil, his oil refineries and pipelines controlled almost all of the oil in the United States. He had a complete monopoly at one point. And Andrew Carnegie, who had a monopoly on steel. They're called the Titans because their wealth was just unimaginable. So you have Krupp, Rockefeller, and Carnegie here, kind of the three poster children for the monopolies. And they were called by two different names. They were called captains of industry or robber barons. The captain of industry is a positive term. This means they're using their fortune for good. They are, expanding the economy. They're providing jobs. When you think about it, when Rockefeller opened up an oil refinery, that's thousands of jobs in an area, and that's a good thing. It expands the economy. It's providing new products. They would use their fortunes to build public works like Carnegie Hall and Carnegie Mellon University. They would build all kinds of parks and concert halls and schools and then just give them away to cities. But they were also called the robber barons, which is the negative term. And this is where they use their fortune for personal gain, where they use it to influence politics and buy politicians to get them to do what they want. They put other people out of business who threaten their monopolies, and they threaten their workers, and in Carnegie's case even had some of his workers shot during a strike to basically get their companies as powerful as they can. So a lot of these guys are both captains of industry and robber barons at the same time. They're kind of in that gray area where they do a lot of good things for the economy, but they also use their fortune. And if you get in their way, they're going to steamroll through you. So some of the major advancements of the second industrial revolution that we're going to go over in this part are all the things that fix a lot of problems from the previous industrial revolution. The first one is steel. The initial industrial revolution, steel was very expensive, and and iron was still used a lot. But the Bessemer process, which Carnegie kind of pioneers, makes steel stronger, lighter, durable, and most importantly, cheaper. So people can begin using steel to pretty much build everything. And our modern society is built on steel. Electricity is also a major part because this begins in the late 1800s to replace steam. It's more efficient, it's safer. Michael Faraday's dynamo makes it so that electricity can be generated very efficiently. And then Thomas Edison's light bulb makes it so it can actually be used. This allows factories to work 24/7 around the clock because people can actually see. And suddenly you get more and more products because electricity speeds up and makes it more efficient. And if you remember back to us talking about the business cycle, when you're making products more efficiently and making them faster, that causes the price of those products to fall. So the second industrial revolution continues to speed up that process. Alfred Nobel and his dynamite makes it easier to construct buildings and tunnels and bridges, and it makes mining more efficient. So these three things really come together to become the building blocks of the second industrial revolution. Without them, none of the other stuff would happen. You have the dynamo here, light bulb, and then Alfred Nobel, who eventually developed the Nobel Prize. The second two things are the interchangeable part and the assembly line. The interchangeable part was very, very important because now machines could be equipped very, very simply and cheaper. Before the interchangeable part was common, a lot of goods were made as whole, but now they're made from pieces that can easily be swapped out. The assembly line also kind of goes along with this because people did simple tasks at a station very, very quickly, and this speeds up industrialization, it speeds up modernization, it makes products cheaper, and it allows, again, more products to be produced and kind of streamlines the process. In transportation, there was a huge revolution, which was the internal combustion engine, which is pretty much what powers everything that we have today, from cars to trains. And it's going to be run on oil. So we're moving away from coal and moving more towards oil. So the automobile is obviously powered by the internal combustion engine. It's first invented by Carl Benz. And then Henry Ford really streamlines the manufacturing process using the assembly line and begins to mass produce cheap automobiles because they have a lot of advantages, obviously, over trains. With a train, if there's no train line into your town, you can't travel. With an automobile, it really doesn't matter. You can go wherever there's a road. Airplanes are invented in 1903 by Orville and Wilbur Wright, and they launched their first airplane, which, while at first they're kind of just like experiments, but by 1914, 1915, and World War I, planes began to be used in combat and then later on, eventually to transport people and goods even. Communication technology also advances extremely quickly. First was Samuel Morse and his telegraph in 1944, and the telephone in 1844, and the telephone with Alexander Graham Bell. Both of these have limitations, though, where they are A to B communication. The real revolution comes with the radio in 1896, and this is the first mass communication device really created, where you could reach thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people at a time, and it really changes our society. This is where the mass following of sports comes from, and the arts. People would sit around and listen to, ball games and football games, and they would listen to plays on the radio. And it really won't be supplanted until the invention of TV, when TV becomes the normal way of mass communication. Lastly is medicine. Medicine really changes during the second industrial revolution because mostly germ theory. Louis Pasteur is able to prove germ theory using the microscope that tiny little microbes cause disease. And that begins to be transferred into hospitals and medical care. Florence Nightingale's modern hospital is the idea that a hospital should do more harm than good. And she really pushes modern nursing and modern doctoring techniques, combining that with Joseph Lister's antiseptic and sanitation to really make hospitals clean and understand why diseases are caused. So, again, the death rate continues to drop and population continues to rise. So I hope this kind of helps you understand the Industrial Revolution a little bit more. And if you need any help, just let me know.